Art is something that is often not understood. People will look at a banana duct taped to a wall and wonder why anyone would buy it for millions, only to then eat the banana. So what is art? Is it about the technical mastery put on display? Is it the meaning behind the work? Or is it something that can only be appreciated long after the artist's death? Robert Redford has said that art is simply the language of the soul. When a child makes a crayon drawing and hands it to you, you take their emotions in hand. When a street artist exaggerates the subject's features, they highlight the uniqueness of a person. But when a graffiti artist sprays a wall, it exposes the soul of the city. Graffiti is an artistic expression that is done on public spaces, typically a wall or a building. It can be as simple as taking a spray can and writing your name, or painting an entire mural. Graffiti comes in many forms, from a marker or spray cans, to wheat paste and stencils. Humanity has been drawing on walls since we lived in caves and drew stick figures hunting. And we've continued this tradition throughout history to this day. Many cities have distinct graffiti cultures, but the commonality between them all is that the government criminalizes it as vandalism. Graffiti artists typically do not have permission before they start painting the side of a wall. Sometimes they do, and sometimes graffiti artists can be commissioned to draw a piece. The average response time to remove a piece of graffiti is roughly 7 days, but graffiti can stay up for months to years in many cases. The actual process to remove it could range from 30 minutes if it's small, to a few hours for larger pieces. The US spends roughly $12 billion each year to clean graffiti. And many times, the businesses that have graffiti on its walls will be the ones who are fined for it. Marc Ecko's Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure, is a long name, so let's break it down. Born Marc Louis Milakovsky, Marc Ecko is a former graffiti artist turned fashion designer. Back in college, Marc used to paint graffiti under the pseudonym Ecko before taking a break from school to pursue his art. And at the age of 24, Marc officially changed his name to Marc Ecko for his clothing brand. Maybe you're familiar with this rhino. That is the logo for Ecko Unlimited. Getting up is the term for making a name for yourself. One of the most common ways graffiti artists make a name for themselves is to literally make their name the art. Because if you don't know whose artwork is on the wall, anyone could take credit for it. And one of the ways to get up is to paint up high, and what is referred to as heaven spots. Spots where if you fall, you'll be seeing heaven. But more risk means more rep. And Contents Under Pressure is a double entendre, for both the pressure of having to throw up your piece without being caught by the police, as well as the aerosol cans that artists typically use to spray paint a wall. I do want to preface before I get into discussing the meat of the game, that I'm not advocating for people to begin spray painting walls and whatnot. What I'm presenting is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I do, however, recommend that you try the game, but be warned, the controls are a bit weird. The story focuses on a young artist named Train in the city of New Radius, who wants to become a legendary graffiti artist. However, he quickly makes enemies of a graffiti group called the Vandals of New Radius, aka the Vandals. When he starts painting over their work, he gets jumped by their leader, Gabe, and his main entourage, and they steal his paint. Train decides to go to war, and take down some of the Vandals' top artists and spray over their stuff. Like Dip, who's played by P. Diddy.
I'm gonna show you how we do it at a Diddy party.
Along the way, Train meets graffiti legends, like Futura and Shepard Fairey, who offer him tips on how to up his game and ascend to legend status. But the Vandals are not the only group Train has to look out for, as the police's Vandal Squad is here to crack down on vandalism, and crack skulls if they must, under the approval of Mayor Sung. The game's setting is very reminiscent of New York City, but more Orwellian. The Vandals' color scheme and in-game inspiration is the New Radius Stunners, a basketball team whose logo is based on the New York Knicks, and their idol, number 33, would have been NBA legend Patrick Ewing. The mayor of the city, Mayor Sung, could possibly be a reference to Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who would have been the mayor of New York at the time of the game's development, and who implemented an unconstitutional policy that increased stop and frisk and saw a disproportionate number of blacks and Latinos being stopped and checked for contraband. As Train works to increase his rep, he sprays walls, SWAT trucks, subway cars, freeway signs, and more. And you can see his art improving over time as he starts painting murals and experimenting with his style and implementing new tools in his art. And now it's time to talk about Train's name. Train's name is possibly a reference to the fact that graffiti artists love to hit subway cars. Subways are the most popular form of transportation for New Yorkers, so a graffiti artist's work was likely to be seen by a lot of people, before the car would eventually be taken out to be cleaned. You even have a mission where you have to paint an entire subway car as it's moving on the rails, and what is probably one of the coolest missions of the game. As Train raises his status and becomes more respected, he starts facing increased pressure from the vandals as they start going over his stuff, and the police are cracking down even harder on graffiti artists. And as you work to keep growing your rep, you begin to see more and more art featuring the numbers 906. We'll get back to this in a bit, but for now, it's time for a graffiti battle. This battle represents the beginning of a turning point in the story. Train has finally gotten his revenge by beating the leader of the Vandals at his own game. But victory is short-lived, as the police swarm the scene and start making arrests. Train and Gabe decide to meet up at the abandoned amusement park, where they face a police captain of the Vandal squad. And after a hard-fought victory, they learn the police was fueling the war between Train and the Vandals by impersonating both sides. Train and Gabe officially squash their beef and focus on what matters, becoming legends. So far, the story's been pretty light. Lots of art, lots of sneaking around, lots of combat, some murder. Okay, lots of murder. Train ends up killing a lot of people by the end of the game. But it's starting now where things begin to get darker. You see, over the course of the game, you've had something of a mentor guiding you on your journey. Decoy. Decoy is a graffiti legend who's been pointing you to where you should focus your attention. And it's here where he chastises you for going on the news and poking the bear that is the police and Mayor Sung. Because according to Decoy, we don't understand just how dangerous they are. They know a lot more about us than we think, likely even having a file on us. So, we break into the police station with Gabe and find the file that they have on us, and it includes a mention of our father. We manage to escape before we get grabbed, but Gabe isn't so lucky. Back at the hideouts, the crew questions what happened to Gabe since nobody seems to be able to get in contact with him. Then, suddenly, a fire breaks out, and everyone has to run for their lives. Train ends up separated from the rest of the group and has to jump onto a neighboring building's roof, only to be met by the police chief. In the conflict, a sniper in a chopper misses sniping Train and ends up blowing a gas tank on the roof, causing the floor to begin to crumble below the police chief. Train tries to save him, but it's too late, and the chief falls to his death. And the nearby news crew, catching all of this, edits the footage to make Train into a murderer. Which he is, but not for the chief's death. That's like the one death that's not his fault. Train is now a fugitive on the run. His crew leaves him, Gabe is still missing, so what's there to do? Train starts covering his wanted posters with art until he figures out what he wants to do. And it's while he's painting that he runs into Gabe. And after chasing down Gabe reveals that he sold you and Decoy out to the police. So, you leave him hanging there and run as fast as you can to Decoy's place, but it's too late. Decoy is there, bleeding out under a pile of rubble. And it's here where Decoy reveals the meaning of 906. Remember those 906s that were popping up everywhere? That was Decoy, and it was meant as a direct challenge to Mayor Sung. The true meaning of 906 is that it's the day that Train's dad died. You see, Decoy and Train's dad knew each other in prison. Decoy gave Train's dad an in with Mayor Sung. Train's dad would clean up skeletons in Mayor Sung's closet. Mayor Sung would let him walk free. Eventually, Mayor Sung even had him take out his competition for mayor. But when the dust settled, the biggest skeleton that remained was him. So Mayor Sung took him out too. Decoy, racked with guilt, sprayed 906 to tell Mayor Sung, "I know what you did." But Decoy didn't have the evidence to prove it. So Decoy ended up guiding us, like a form of penance. But it's over now. So Train decides to take up Decoy's fight and declares war on Mayor Sung. And it's about time that Train went for Mayor Sung's throat. Welcome to Definitely Not the Brooklyn Bridge. This will be part 1 of his attack on Mayor Sung. Train paints the freeway signs with his message exposing Mayor Sung, and paints the side of the bridge with his tag. And the interesting part is, something like this has happened before. Sainsmith, a pair of graffiti artist brothers from New York, actually hit the top level of the Brooklyn Bridge with their tag in the 80s. New York's response was to sue them for $3 million. However, the lawsuit would eventually be dropped when Sain was found dead in Flushing Bay. After Train paints the bridge, he hitches a ride on Mayor Sung's blimp, which Mayor Sung plans to host his New Year's countdown from. Train sneaks into the blimp and replaces the copier releasing flyers promoting Mayor Sung with his own flyer exposing him for 906. He also sneaks to the stage where a new mural Mayor Sung had commissioned is going to be unveiled at midnight, and alters it to call him guilty. Before Train can escape, he is confronted by the assassin who killed his father. Train manages to fight her off and escape by jumping off the blimp onto a building and somehow surviving, before eventually disappearing, becoming a ghost. Mayor Sung is exposed for the criminal that he is, and a man overlooks the city from the top floor of a skyscraper, while Train meets his gaze. But Train is still a wanted man, so he pulls his hood up and sprays a camera before fleeing once more, still free. Marc echoes getting up, contents under pressure, never performed as well as hoped. Plans for a sequel never came, and plans for a movie have been teased with Legends of New Radius, which looks to tell the story of the game. But Marc Ecko still hopes to one day make that promised sequel. Graffiti is often demonized. Vandalism is included in crime statistics as a type of property crime, alongside things like theft and burglary. As such, abundant graffiti in a given area can give the perception of an unsafe neighborhood and drive down property values. And when places are cheap to buy, people can come in and redevelop the area. 5 Points in Queens is one such example. A staple of graffiti culture, where the owner had actually given permission for people to paint there, was later demolished by the same owner to make way for condominiums. 5 Points was famous because of the graffiti, and people would travel from all over the world to visit and paint there. And while artists won a $6.7 million lawsuit based on the Visual Artists' Rights Act of 1990, the building is still gone. Graffiti is one of the things that can give life to a city. If not for it, you'd see blank, lifeless walls. Artists leave a little bit of themselves when they make art, whether they intend to or not. But graffiti simultaneously can damage a community by giving the impression that it's unsafe. Graffiti has been a part of our history since before we had words. When a graffiti artist sprays a wall, they speak loud. And when it is removed from that wall, that voice is silenced. But humanity has a habit of wanting to make their voices heard.